Alright, so you ever just share an opinion with your fellow car guy buddies, and instead of just accepting that we as humans have different opinions, they start to insist that you're wrong and proceed to use one of these phrases to explain why. Those phrases are exactly what I'm going to talk about in this video, which are stupid things car guys say to each other. This is a phrase that I hear a lot from people, which is, "You're just jealous, you can't afford it," and another variation of this phrase is, "You just hate it because you can't buy it." Chances are you've probably heard this overused phrase, and usually the type of context that people use this phrase in is when you disagree with them about whatever opinion that they have on a certain car. So I'll share two instances in which I've heard this phrase. The first one being about the Nissan GT-R by Ital Design. I simply stated that I didn't like its appearance, and then someone threw out the phrase, "You're just jealous, you can't afford it." First off, money does not at all have anything to do with it. I have eyes, and with those eyes, I've decided to look at the car and then compare it to other cars I've seen, and eventually draw a conclusion that I don't like its appearance. Moving on to the second instance, it's no secret that I loathe the second gen Acura NSX, and no matter what your opinion on it is, the fact of the matter is that it failed miserably in selling during its launch. However, a lot of people who did like it were really salty that I disliked it, and the most common phrase they said was, "You just hate it because you can't buy it." Keep in mind that if you can't afford something, you can still criticize it. You don't have to be able to purchase something to know whether or not if it's going to fail. Using market data, simple observational skills, and consumer feedback, you can make an educated judgment on how successful a product will be, even if you've never purchased it before. It's our job as consumers to criticize a product so that the manufacturer will either improve it or lower the price until it does meet what the product is actually worth. If you just go around like a blind fanboy encouraging manufacturers' corrupt tactics, then the manufacturer will never learn and they'll continue to push out garbage products at garbage prices. You need to sometimes be a quote-unquote hater and dish out some criticism in hopes that the manufacturer learns for the future. You can't dislike something you haven't driven. That's total BS. You absolutely can dislike a car even without having driven it. To illustrate my point, let's talk about movies. Let's say the horror genre just is not your thing, because you've tried so many horror movies, like you've watched a ton of them, and you just kind of thought, you know what, that genre just sucks, I don't like it, it's not for me. However, a new horror movie comes out, one that you haven't watched yet. Let me ask you, do you need to watch that movie to come to the conclusion that you won't enjoy it? The answer is probably not, since the genre itself you've already determined to not be to your taste. In that same vein, if a new SUV were to come out, I don't need to drive it. I'm going to dislike it regardless because SUVs aren't my thing. And you may think that is very close-minded of me because the most common follow-up phrase I hear from people is, "Well, you're missing out then. You never know if you miss out on an SUV that you might have liked." And I think that's a weak as hell argument because even as we speak, we're always missing out on something. You shouldn't be hung up on the fear of missing out. We develop preferences for a reason. We specialize our taste and gravitate towards what we already know and enjoy because we're not immortal. Our lifespan is limited. I'd rather not waste my time driving thousands of different SUVs in the off chance I might finally enjoy one, instead of just trying like 2 pickup trucks and being like, yeah, this is awesome, because my preference is a pickup truck. I don't have to care about the fear of missing out on that one good SUV. It isn't worth the amount of time I need to spend in finding it. So you don't need to drive a car in order to dislike it. That concept is plain ridiculous. Now, could you probably develop a more thorough opinion by driving it? Of course, you could. But, again, if my disposition towards the first 100 SUVs I've driven are mostly negative, then the 101st SUV will likely only change my opinion ever so slightly. And again, I'd rather not waste my time. If I've already come to the conclusion that SUVs aren't my thing, I'm just gonna dislike every other SUV. I'm not saying you can't like SUVs. You can go ahead and like whatever you want, okay? Don't be offended that I don't like the same things you like. In that same vein, I can't be offended if you don't like the same things I don't like. I mean, there's a reason why manufacturers make different cars in the first place. It's because we as consumers all have different preferences. It's as they say, life is too short to drive a boring car. In that sense, go make haste and find the one that you love. That way you can spend more time driving the cars that you love instead of finding them. Now, the next phrase that people kind of say in the car community usually pertains to replica cars and kit cars and other cars like that you have to build. They'll say stuff like, well, have you built a car? Even if their car sucks, at least they built one, so you can't judge it. I'm gonna say this as that response. Movie critics don't have to make a movie to know whether or not if a movie is bad. It's the same with a car. I don't need to build a car myself to know when a car has been built poorly. In fact, that even applies to non-car people. If I put a non-car person in a completely broken down, beat up piece of crap, they're gonna sit and be like, yeah, this is a horrible car. Like, they can judge it. Who cares? I don't care that you built it. It sucks. People especially get offended when it comes to replica supercars. For example, someone makes a replica Lamborghini that looks nothing like the original, and then understandably, a lot of people are gonna bash on that person, like, wow, this is a horrible replica. And then you're gonna have all those little snowflakes come in and be like, oh, you're so mean to them, like, oh, they still built it, and you guys are just being haters. First off, let's look at the dictionary definition of replica. The whole point of replica is to copy or reproduce a pre-existing product. So, having said that, you can't call a horrible Lamborghini replica a replica because it's not doing its job of being similar to the original. It's nothing like the original. And the worse of a replica you make, the more you're opening yourself up to that criticism. If you don't want to deal with that, don't make a replica. Make something like a Vader, or make something with original design that you've styled and designed yourself. Because then that way when someone comes up to you and be like, wow, you know, this looks nothing like a Lamborghini, good. It's not supposed to look like a Lamborghini. It's your original design. But when you do make something a replica, you have to understand that people are going to criticize it because it has to somewhat replicate what it's trying to be. That doesn't make us haters. If anything, us offering our criticism can help you improve your replica. Now, on the topic of replica cars, a very common thing that a lot of car guys say, replica cars take away from the original car, and I think it's quite the opposite. I think that they actually add to the original car by keeping the legacy alive. When you talk about original cars, like for example an original Cobra, it's worth millions of dollars, and most of the owners of the originals just store them away in some garage 6 stories under, and they let them collect dust. Which is why it makes me proud to see committed individuals make replicas of Cobras and actually drive them. Because they're keeping the legacy alive. They're actually doing what a car is supposed to be used for. They're driving it. And in that sense, I think replicas are awesome. I think it's awesome that they can be out there on the road, keep the legacy alive. In today's segment of Just Car Guy Things, the feeling when potholes don't bother you because your tires are so wide that they don't even sink in and just glide over them. If you or any of your car buddies have heard these phrases used against you, make sure to share these videos to those people. Other than that, thank you for watching and see you guys next time. Blade Angel out.